Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top 10, the top value videos right now, the top value picks for week 13. Happy to have you here. To the ladies, to the fellas, to the gentlemen, to all you people out there right now. Let's slide into it. Week 13. Hey, get the backpack on, right? Get it on. Get your tools, right? Get your tools in the backpack. Throw them in there. Zip that bad boy up, and you're ready. You're ready for war in the DFS and the betting streets, and you're ready to rock. You're ready to roll into week 13. There you go. Your mindset's flipped on. Your energy's rolling. Your shoulders are leaning. Your shoes are off. Your feet are up. Let's do this. Let's get into it, and we're going to start this week the running back position. 5 of the best value plays as of this recording. Now, there's a disclaimer to put on this right away. Obviously, injury news, as I record this and this comes out on Wednesday morning, is going to be injury news that we don't yet have from practice reports. So maybe Darrell Henderson doesn't play this week, and then Sony Michel will probably jump up based on his price tag into this top 5 range. But until we have the news, that's just to let you know, disclaimer alert, before we have that news, we're going to rock and roll with these 5 players. I'm going to start with number 5 at the running back position. And number 5 is a man who is, in my opinion, probably the pickup of the entire year this season. The man that came out the gates week 1 and ended up seeing double-digit opportunities. He's been right now borderline as it is top 5 in opportunity share in the NFL right now, ranking 6 with a 76% opportunity share. He's played 60% or more than snaps in every single week where he has been out there and healthy. San Francisco 49ers running back. San Francisco 49ers that ranked number 2. Deuce, right? Deuce, right? Number 2 in running plays per game. That helps Elijah Mitchell at $6,000. Elijah Mitchell has had 27 carries in back-to-back games. And not only that, the bigger thing that is interesting here with Elijah Mitchell is you see the receiving game happening now. Now you might be saying, but Sound, 2 weeks ago he had no targets. Yeah, but they were up big on the Rams. You're not going to start throwing the ball to your running back when you're just going to give him the ball 27 times on the ground. Am I right? And in that game as well, Deebo Samuel seeing like 8 carries. Deebo Samuel's had a rushing touchdown in 3 straight weeks now, and actually 4 in 3 games. And now he is not going to be out there for a week or 2. So even more of a bonus for Elijah Mitchell back there. Elijah Mitchell, who has 5 or more targets in 2 out of the last 3 games when they haven't been blowing out the opponent. And you get a nice total here. You get a nice spot for Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell I have for 16.8 fantasy points at a $6,000 price tag on Draftkings. He has a 24.5 team total, which is nice for San Francisco as 4-point favorites. And this San Francisco team over the last month and a half, they're hitting their stride. They're finding their way with that outside zone running scheme, right? It's looking good. Now, hopefully Deebo doesn't crater their offense, but perfect time for Ayuk to get going. Even more opportunity now on the bone for Kittle. Juwan Jennings, you'd like to see him get involved. Last week, he's now going to operate as a wide receiver too. An obvious drop down from Deebo Samuel. So give me the Elijah Mitchell opportunities that we're seeing and the added confidence in his receiving game role. Now, 19.8 opportunities per game is a lovely time for him. I will say that it's kind of 5A, 5B for me with Darrell Henderson. They grade out as the same value rating. Of course, track Darrell Henderson's status. By the time you're watching this, maybe he's unlikely to play or it's not looking great as he suffered, I believe, a groin injury versus the Packers on Sunday in week 12. So Elijah Mitchell, a 5A, 5B with Darrell Henderson as we slide now into a cheaper player who's still in the 5K range after being a cheap player the last 2 times we've seen him on the slate. That's David Montgomery, who you just saw in prime time, Thanksgiving, right? You getting the cooking going on. Maybe your family that eats real early, depending on which coast you're on, the left coast, the right coast, the middle of the plot of land we call the United States. Now, maybe you're there, and depending on what time you're watching this game, you might be eating down on them turkeys, eating down on them jam, them mashed potatoes, and you're saying, damn you, David Montgomery. The highest owned fucking player on this showdown slate, or on this, probably showdown slate, and also this main slate on Thanksgiving, and you go out there and how dare you score 10.4 fantasy points. And I hope everybody thinks that, because then he's going to be low owned and potentially a leverage play this week. We shall see. And if David Montgomery, who I have projected for 17 fantasy points, and by the way, going back to Elijah Mitchell really quickly, a positive 32% run blocking advantage against Seattle's decent run defense. It's been good, right? It's been good overall. Jamal Adams coming down into the box. Maybe one of the worst you're going to find 2 first-round picks for that guy, right, in terms of what their team actually needed. So good spot for Elijah Mitchell. Also a good spot for David Montgomery. Now, in terms of being a 7.5-point underdog, not great, but maybe we get some of that pass catching work like you saw last week when he saw 5 targets in that game. But it's a good matchup in terms of right now he's going to go up against an Arizona run defense that ranks second worst graded run defense according to Pro Football Focus. A positive 54%, the higher the number, the better here. A positive 54% run blocking advantage for the Bears, and David Montgomery ranks top 5 for week 13. We like that. Montgomery, even though in that game, like he didn't get you there, 10.4 fantasy points in a floor game, I mean, you ended up still seeing high opportunities. This man is still seeing a 77% opportunity share, which right now, as I have written down right here, number 5 in the NFL with over 18 opportunities per game, over 3 red zone touches per game, and he's number 2 amongst all running backs in snaps. So his role is so secure, right? The rookie Khalil Herbert's look good, goes right back to being on the bench. Damian Williams, if he's ever going to return, I don't think he's actually going to be a factor here. David Montgomery's role looks good for the price tag. It comes down to the ownership. If he's middling to lower owned, that's when it's really easy, especially in one lineup builds, to just pivot to him as a leverage play. Now we start getting into these top 3 plays that will likely pick up ownership because they're top 3 plays, and it really comes down to your total lineup ownership. You have to keep that in mind at this point. Number 3 right now is Alexander Madison at $7,600. He is a value. He is a point per dollar by the definition of this value. Bang for your buck. I have him currently, as it stands, for 23.1 fantasy points. That is number 2, only behind Jonathan Taylor, who is over $1,000 more in price than him. And I have Jonathan Taylor for about a point more. He has a lovely 27 team total, one of the highest you'll see on the week. That's one of the few times the Vikings will be one of the highest on the week as a 7-point favorite. Oh yeah, because they're versing the Detroit Lions. They're terrible, number 30 overall defense. They're dead last ranked tackling unit. Now going to have to try and tackle a 6-foot, 225-pound Alexander Madison, who, oh yeah, has looked really good in general, filling in the last 3 or 4 times for Dalvin Cook, including this year twice. Now, those 2 times this year, he was a lot cheaper in the price tag than he currently is, but he's dominated those 2 starts. I mean, week 3, 67% of the snaps, 34 opportunities, including 8 targets. He goes for over 26 fantasy points. Dalvin Cook comes back, is limited. They say, hey, we're going to hold you out another week. And then in week 5, you get to start again. 29.3 fantasy points on 32 opportunities and 7 targets. I mean, it's the exact Alexander Madison show. We know that Kirk can get it done. He's played really well this year. He can get it done to Jefferson, to Thielen coming off the 2-touchdown game. Sometimes to Conklin and Osborne. But this team wants to run the ball. That's how they're built. And Alexander Madison is a really good, maybe not 1-for-1 replacement, but I mean, based on his performances this year, definitely a 1-for-1 replacement this year alone to Dalvin Cook. So Madison looks good, and I do expect Madison to be like a top 3, top 4 on running back this week. So it is so vital, especially if you're playing in single entry, smaller fields where you're going to find your best contests. It is so vital if you want to play Alexander Madison this week, who's like the cover boy of the first look video because he looks like such a great play. The only 2 performances this year, he's paid off for people. Everybody has positive expectations for Alexander Madison. The matchup cannot get any better for him. This game environment looks juicy. If you want to play him, that is fine. Just make sure that in that lineup, depending on how many people are in your contest, if you're playing in a 200-person contest, get different in 1 to 2 spots. A 2,000-person contest, you have to get different at least in 3 spots, maybe even 4, right? Just get unique with your stack, whatever it might be, and go from there. So now let's get into the top 2 values. And if you're curious where I'm getting these projections, potential ownership numbers that come out in videos later in the week, it's my own tools that I have on Patreon. It's industry low prices. You can check them out. There's not only projections and ownership and rankings. There's an optimizer. There's a Discord with 1,000+ members thriving and having a lovely time up in there. And that's just the beginning of the tools that you get, especially when you're talking about other sports, NBA similar tools, PGA, MMA, and so on. So come on into the community. We love you. It's December 1st when you're watching this. There's no better time than the beginning of the month, the last month of the year, to come on into the family. We'll say, hey, welcome home, welcome home. The top 2 running back value plays now. Again, these guys likely to pick up some ownership, but there is easy pivot options in their range. So the second guy here, number 2, is going to be James Conner, $6,000 James Conner. We talked about him in the first look video. If you haven't seen those clips or that video, check them out on the channel. But 18.4 fantasy point projection, a 26.5 point team total, and a touchdown 7-point favorite. All those things look great. We're not expecting Chase Edmonds to play this week. You've had 2 starts for James Conner without Chase Edmonds. Really 3 games because Edmonds got hurt early 3 weeks ago or a month ago now because they're coming off the bye. And James Conner has looked good every single time. We continued the trend of running backs in great spots, right? Alexander Madison versus the dead last ranked tackling unit of Detroit and their terrible defense. And oh yeah, now you get James Conner with a nice team total, nearly 4 touchdowns projected, with a nice overall spread of being a 7-point favorite, more rushing opportunities potentially for him on average. And now he gets the bottom 5 ranked, number 28 overall in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus, run defense of the Chicago Bears, who due to injuries, like the Bears, you think, oh no, they're a good defensive line. No, due to injuries, this defensive line has looked pretty damn terrible. So a positive 40% advantage for James Conner, which ranks top 10 and borderline top 5 on the week. And he's been strong with no Chase Edmonds in there as this full workhorse back. In the last 2 games that he has started, 41 of the 55 opportunities is a 74% opportunity share, which would rank about top 5 in the NFL right now. In week 9, the game where Edmonds leaves early being hurt, he sees 26 touches. He drops those so many touchdowns, 40 fantasy points. In week 10, where they're getting blown out because Colt Mccoy goes Colt McCoy, gets 14 opportunities, still 15.5 fantasy points in a complete blowout. You'll take that, especially even at $6,000. That's not a terrible score. And then week 11 gets back on the horse. He sees 84% of the snaps, a season high for him. He sees 27 opportunities and 6 targets, and the man goes out there on 79% of the opportunities and scores 21 fantasy points. We like him, and now there's an opportunity for Kyler Murray off the bye to potentially come back, which is only going to fuel the upside for longer drives, which means more touches, red zone opportunities, which means more chances for the tutty downs. The tutty downs, baby. James Conner, number 2 running back value. Now, the number 1 running back value is assuming, based on the news we've gotten out of Detroit, that he does not see. The head coach out there does not see DeAndre Swift playing this week, which means that Jamal Williams, former Green Bay Packer, is the next man up in line against a former Packer division foe and also the Lions division foe right now, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, a 20 implied team total isn't great, of course, and you're going to get a good matchup, though. Minnesota 25th versus the run, getting a little bit healthier, so a little better, but a positive 53% run blocking advantage. It's actually a top 10 matchup for Jamal Williams this week. Jamal Williams, who is just $5,400, who I have for an 18.5 point projection, is my number 1 value play of the week, assuming DeAndre Swift misses. Now, Jamal Williams is not just a backup, and a lot of you know that he's this pretty solid running back that we got to actually witness often for the Green Bay Packers. I mean, you saw him in 2 starts in 2020 when Aaron Jones ended up missing. Week 7, he sees a full-time role of 89% of the snaps. And I get it, it's a different team, but it's just showing you what he is made of, and I assume Detroit is going to give him a somewhat similar role. Maybe not 89 to 90% of the snaps, but just a full workhorse role. So last year, week 7, he sees 89% of the snaps, 23 touches, he scores 21 fantasy points, sees 5 targets. And then in week 8, back-to-back weeks, now 90% of the snaps, 22 touches, he sees 18 points on 6 targets. I mean, he just has this role. He's a very secure pass catcher. A few years back, he ranked top 3, 3rd overall in pass catching running backs in the entire NFL. In the receiving game, he is a very solid pass protector, which will keep him on the field more than a rookie Jamar Jefferson. If Jefferson is even to come back and play, more so than Godwin Owigunu. I can't even say the last name right now. It's escaping me, but it's somewhere along those lines. The veteran Jamal Williams is going to be out there more so, especially in this divisional matchup where he is familiar with the divisional foe, the Minnesota Vikings. So he looks very good. In week 12, when DeAndre Swift got hurt in the first half, you saw Jamal Williams in a game where Swift is playing for like a quarter and a half. You still see Jamal Williams go out there and see 20 touches on 20 opportunities at over 80 yards, saw 5 targets. Jamal Williams looks really good. Another guy, though, who's going to be 20+% owned. An 11-game slate, an extra game than last week, balance out the ownership a little bit, but just know he's going to have some significant ownership on him. So those are the top 5 running backs right there. We're about to transition now to the top 5 wide receivers. If you're watching this on the Clips channel, check out the top 5 wide receiver video that's about to come up.